Okay, I'm going to call to order the August 14, 2019 meeting of the Board of Education. Mrs. Hutchinson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Wheaton.
Here.
Mrs. Crabtree.
Here.
Mrs. Erickson.
Here.
Mr. Hanlon.
Here.
Mr. Long.
Here.
Mr. Matheson.
Here.
Mr. Paulson.
Here. The first item, Mrs. Murphy, and please lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the public hearing. I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing on the 2019-2020 budget.
So moved.
Moved by Chris. Second. Second by Dave. We have a roll call vote.
Mrs. Crabtree.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mrs. Wheaton.
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon.
Yes.
Mr. Matheson.
Yes.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes. Okay, we're in our open hearing on the 2019-20 budget. Has anybody signed up for public comment? We have no public comments. Are there any other people that would wish to comment on our budget tonight? It's been posted for the last 30 days.
Yes, the Finance Committee met, reviewed it, and are pleased with it, and would recommend that we approve this when appropriate.
And approval would be at the next meeting. Correct. In our September meeting. Okay, any other comments? Okay, can I have an approval to close the public hearing on the 2019-2020 budget? And a motion is second. Moved by Susan. Second. Second by Rob. Another roll call vote.
Mrs. Wheaton.
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon.
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree.
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Matheson.
Yes.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes. Okay, we're back out of the public hearing and back to our regular meeting. Does anybody have any modifications to the agenda tonight? Okay. First item is very exciting. Dr. Schuler, I think we have some pretty wonderful recognitions.
We do. So certainly one of the highlights of the summer for me was the opportunity to go down to Chicago and watch the national pitch contest for the incubator class. So there are high schools all around the country that are participating in incubator, and there's a great opportunity for students to apply to be a part of a national pitch contest. And so I'm not going to steal any more of the thunder. What I'm actually doing is introduce Mr. Greg Chrisman, who is the teacher of the Wheaton North Incubator Program, to come up and make some introductory comments. So, Greg.
It's just a pleasure to be here. It's great. Thank you guys for inviting us. And,
Greg, can you use the mic, please?
oh,
Sorry. Just switch it on.
On the very bottom.
Just wait like 2 seconds.
You gotta teach your voice.
okay. So thanks again for inviting us and recognizing the accomplishments that the Allergenus team has made. This is a truly remarkable group of students. Everyone that's a part of them and around them appreciate all the hard work they have put in. We're all extremely proud of them. They have represented the incubator program, Wheaton North, and also the community of Wheaton in the highest manner. They are just a great group of kids. To have them in class is a complete pleasure. They have really embraced the entrepreneurship spirit. Sorry about this. They are just fantastic. And one of the things they have done is they have really kind of, they embrace incubator as a program as a whole. They put the time into it, not just in the class, but outside of it. And I think that's really what kind of separated them from the other students, not just in our class, but also the other programs in the other schools. They had great leadership in their mentors. And this, Chris is here. I don't know if Sherry's here.
Sherry's taking her daughter to college.
And they're the two community leaders that were paired up with them as mentors, and they helped them with a lot of the activities outside of class, from getting a business license to getting into these different fairs and fests that they handed out samples. So it was tremendous to have them a part of the team, and all of them have really gelled together. So it was great to see this. The amount of learning that these kids did is just tremendous. And this is something that's unmatched. I would never have thought of it. This could happen 15 years ago when I first started here. I'm happy that we have this. And again, it's the second year in existence and we have a national champion. So how cool is that? So with that, I won't talk anymore either. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the students. So come on up. We have Maddie Cook, we have Anya Ranjan, and we have Josh James.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Anya, and we are Allergenius. So I actually want to ask everyone here a question. How many of you know someone who has a food allergy? That's right. Most people know someone or are connected to somebody who has a food allergy. I myself have a severe tree nut allergy. And it's always been really tough for me growing up because I also have a huge sweet tooth. But I have had several intense and life-threatening allergic reactions to products that I thought were safe. And this has led me to conclude two things. First, that my health simply isn't a priority within the baking industry. And second, that there aren't a lot of options for people like me. And there are nearly 32 million people like me in the US alone. So that's why we started the Allergenius Baking Company. Because we wanted to provide an option for those people who have food allergies. When it comes to the question of having a baked good that is safe for you, that you can actually eat, and one that is delicious that you actually want to eat, you shouldn't have to choose. You can have both. And second, we realized that there are a lot of question marks for people who aren't directly affected by food allergies. People who don't have them are confused about what's safe. So we decided to spread awareness through our packaging, through our social media presence, and through our website. And that's why the Allergenius Baking Company is so important, because we have the potential to impact millions of lives by providing that option and by spreading that knowledge. Because with the Allergenius Baking Company, anyone can eat it and everyone will love it.
Just like my friend Anya, I too have a severe food allergy, mine being to dairy. I've experienced allergic reactions that, honestly, no one should have to go through, and I know what it's like to have to choose between my own personal health and safety and the food that I love. But Allergenius Baking Company was created for people just like me. So who are we, and what is our mission? We are a company that creates baked goods free of the 14 most common allergens so that anyone can eat them. We're also dedicated to spreading allergy awareness in order to change the baking industry from the inside out.
So the biggest selling point of our company is that anyone can eat it and everyone will love it, but don't take our word for it. We have some samples for you guys to try today. And this is the latest commercial that we've created. I think someone else is
Can we have someone click on the video?
As you try these baked goods, please keep in mind they are free of the 14 most common allergens, including 4 that are virtually impossible to avoid in any baked good. So they're free of dairy, eggs, wheat, and soy, and a lot more.
So while Maddie's passing out our treats, let's talk about our product while you're tasting them. We had the amazing opportunity to be at a few different local events here in Wheaton. We had a booth at the Chili Cook-Off, and we also had a booth at the Taste of Wheaton, and at each of these events we gave away about 500 some odd samples. And it was really amazing for us to reach out to the community and see our actual customers taste our product, and we were able to talk to them and get direct feedback. And it was also really amazing because we really saw the community support at these events. I had one instance where there was a boy, when I asked him if he wanted a treat, and he immediately said no because he had never been able to accept a free sample before, but this time he was. So there have been really amazing moments with the community that we've had through this experience.
So the biggest revenue streams for Allergenius are school concession stands, which we're really blessed to have the opportunity to provide our goods there. Also online orders and catering events through our website, and hopefully in the future in-store sales when we acquire product placement in stores. And as you guys know, we competed at the national pitch competition in Chicago at the Convene Center. It was really cool competing against 4 other teams with like brilliant ideas. If you guys have any input on
I think he said it all, but it was really an amazing night, and it was nice to have CUSD200 support there that night, and we're very thankful that we had that opportunity and that success.
So you may be wondering where Allergenius' members are heading off to next. I'll be heading off to Western Michigan University in the fall, double majoring in dance and entrepreneurship. Josh will be heading to the University of Illinois, getting his major in business. And Anya will be in her senior year, and she will be heading up Allergenius as the only physically present member currently for the fall. So what we're doing right now is working on making sure everything is completely ready for Anya to run it from here, Josh and I to run it from afar, and continuing to try and work on getting online orders, selling through school concessions, and hopefully someday in the future having some in-store product placement. And we are so lucky to have received a lot of positive feedback as we've been getting our business off the ground and running. You can see a sampling of that on screen, but we are honestly so thankful for your support, the community support, and we've just been so grateful that everyone has believed in our idea, believed in us, and that our product can make a positive difference and a change in the world. So thank you.
And to that effect, I just wanted to say, and I've said it before, that it's no coincidence that the nationally winning team came from Wheaton North, and came from this amazing community. So really, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us and having us here to speak. Thank you. We are very appreciative.
Well, it's fantastic. Congratulations. We're all so proud of you as a father of a daughter with a food allergy. I love this product and wish you the best and hope to see the business continue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Josh, Eddie, Anya, would you mind coming up? The board, one of the love to do on recognition is just have a chance to shake your hand. Awesome.
I'll take it.
Mr. Contour, so you go anywhere, you just like 1 second. Just one piece I wanted to say kind of really quickly in closing. We had not only the Allergenius team, but one of our other teams at one of our community groups the other day. So the great news about, I think, some of the exposure that's come through the national pitch competition and success is that numbers are up, right, in the incubator class for next year, and that's phenomenal. But what it does mean, kind of the all call for help, is that we need more community mentors. We need folks that are willing to serve as a coach. We need folks that are willing to serve as a mentor for a group, and so. I asked Dan to stay here, both Dan Corntoyer and Julie Pavlini. Julie's out there, wave. Julie, Dan and Julie really were instrumental in kind of helping to launch the incubator program, and I know that Dan and Julie would both happily entertain folks that are interested in learning more about being a mentor. All you got to do is reach out. So tell your friends, tell folks that would be a good asset to the program. It's folks like Chris that truly make the program work in addition to the talented students. So we need some help.
So. So just, I guess, one request from the board. All of us, many of us have Facebook pages. Could the school district kind of draft a little message that we could maybe email to us and we could send out to our own individual
Yes, we're
pages? That would
working on a flyer.
That would be
Yep,
helpful.
yep.
Thank you.
And Allergenius has a website, operating website, so you can go out and make
Can we
one.
order for college care packages?
Yes, yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
The local community group that Jeff referred to as the Lions Club, and I'll tell you, the product and the development of the product and the program is one thing, but the impact on that group was about 80 men, or 80 Lions, men and women, that, how proud we were to the students. I mean, the way they present themselves, it was really a great accomplishment. I was really proud of them being there, so it's really a nice thing. So I'm glad that, and also Wheaton South had a group there too.
Yes.
And they were award winner, not a national award winner, but also an Iowa. It was great.
Great, thank you. Next on our agenda is public comments. No public comments for regular agenda items. Okay. Next is our superintendent's report, Dr. Schuler.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Just a couple of things that I want to share with the board tonight. It's certainly hard to top a recognition like that, but a couple of things I want to give you a quick update on. Number one, thank you to the board members that were able to join us this morning as we welcomed our new teachers to District 200. Chris did a phenomenal job on behalf of the board of welcoming our new staff. I think we had a little over 80 staff members that are in their first year with us. Christy Kuhn shared with me that as of today we are fully staffed in terms of our certified positions for next year. Really turning our attention to filling some of our support staff positions, and we've still got some openings in, but it's good news that with a week remaining, we are fully staffed. Got a notice from the state yesterday that the fourth quarter categorical payment from last year has been delivered. And so actually with kind of the timing and the audit, all 4 of the payments from last year will get picked up and accrued to your fiscal 19 audit. And so while the 4 kind of on a cash basis didn't get to the district before the June 30 end of the fiscal year, at least in kind of the accounting accrual world, actually this is the first time that the state is actually caught up in terms of not only their regular, what used to be general state aid, that's now the evidence-based funding, but the categorical payments are in fact caught up, which is really good news. Also want to send a quick thank you. Last Friday, we tried something a little bit different. I think we've shared with the board the amount of capital improvement work that's been happening across your buildings through this summer that certainly has kept JR and his crew very busy, and getting roofs replaced, floors redone, all that work that's going on. And so we asked the community for a little bit of help with doing some cleanup at especially our elementary buildings. Last Friday, we spread almost 110 yards of mulch across our buildings, did some weeding, had I think almost 100 community members that volunteered time to come out and help us. And high school students, we had some folks off the Citizens Advisory Committee that came in and helped. Really had a nice cross-section of folks that helped us out. I think it was certainly was a success in the first year. It's something we want to be able to keep doing. JR did say it was helpful for him just to kind of feel like they got that good cleanup effort on the exterior of the building. So I wanted to mention that. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, I shared with the board at the end of last week that one of the major kind of state school district ranking organizations released its set of school rankings from last year. they shifted their metrics around a little bit in a way that took some high school only districts and kind of pushed them to the top of the list. So our overall ranking in the state of Illinois was 14. We remain the fifth best K-12 district in the state, which is a consistent place to where we were last year. Certainly as you looked at some of the specific categories, academic achievement, quality people, those key metrics stayed the same. The one opportunity that we really have addressed coming into this year, so it'll be interesting to see if it changed. We got dinged a bit on the quality of food service in the school district, and so we have a new food service provider, and I think some new opportunities to address that, especially at the high school next year. So again, and I mentioned this morning, I think those of you that the new teacher piece, that ratings are good. I think they speak well to the quality of the school district, but they pale in comparison to this celebration, because what I think it's really about is creating opportunities for students to have those kind of life-changing moments that I think you saw with the three, and that's where we're going to continue to focus our efforts. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, next is the consent agenda. We have 9 items listed on the consent agenda tonight. Number 1 is acceptance of gifts from Lincoln Elementary School PTA. Number 2, acceptance of gifts from Sandburg Elementary School PTA. Number 3, acceptance of gifts from the Student Excellence Foundation. Number 4, approval of a resolution approving travel, meal, and lodging expenses. Number 5, approval of annual certification of serious safety hazard bus routes. Number 6, approval of Blackboard Connect and web hosting renewal. Number 7, approval of bills payable and payroll. Number 8, approval of minutes from the July 10, 2019 open and closed, and approval to destroy recordings of closed sessions prior to March 2018 as allowable by law. And number 9, approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Are there any items board members want to be removed from the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to request the personnel report be removed off the consent agenda.
Okay.
So just for clarification, so we'll take that item and actually move it from the regular consent agenda to consent agenda 2. I think we'll be okay with that.
Yes.
Just want to vote on it as a separate piece.
I mean, just for transparency, I'm going to abstain from that vote because my wife is on there for summer employment.
Okay.
So that's the reason for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other information, Dr. Schuler?
No, I've got one comment, but I'll wait until we do the personnel. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding the 8 items on the consent agenda?
Just, again, we've had a couple of emails along the way that clarified a few points. One of which was the, I would call it the bus route, the safety hazard bus route and so on. And, again, it's not that we're just passing these arbitrarily, we've asked some questions.
And to that point, that's something we are required to submit every year for transportation reimbursement from the state.
Right.
There's no changes from the prior.
I don't believe so.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as modified? Just those 8 items. Moved by Jenna. Second by Susan. Mrs. Hutchinson.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mrs. Booten?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes. Okay, the consent agenda as modified is passed. We now have the second consent agenda, item number 9, which was moved off from the original consent agenda. Do I need to read that again?
Go ahead.
Probably should. So this item is the approval of the personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Any information, Dr. Schuler?
Just an introduction. Holly Zimmer is on the personnel report this evening. Holly is the new assistant principal that's going to be sharing time at Hawthorne and Longfellow. Is actually coming to us from Chicago Public Schools, and Certainly, Holly's actually already started with us, so she's really started her employment, but we are excited to have you, so welcome, Holly.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this particular consent agenda item? Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda number 2 as presented?
So moved.
By Chris, I'll second it myself. Roll call vote?
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mrs. Booten?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Abstain.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Okay, the second consent agenda item is passed and is presented, so congratulations. This is where I have to say that you're welcome to stick around the entire evening. I would not be offended if you choose to get on to other things.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay, we have one action item tonight, which really is a conclusion of a very long process, which I think Dr. Schuler might summarize. That is the approval of the revised press Wheaton Warrenville Community Unit School District 200 adoption copy board policy manual. That's a lot to read.
Yes.
Okay, so any information to share with us?
Just want to again mention, kind of in summary, this is the last step in what has been actually a process that's been in play for about 6 months. The policy committee really served to launch into this process. Jenna and Jim Broman was on the policy committee at the start, and we set out to really review all of our policies in the manual. We did that through the use of a resource called the Policy Reference Manual, which is really just a statewide set of model policies that school districts can use to evaluate decisions around their own policies. So really, local policy comes from 2 places. One, are requirements in the school code that we need to have reflected in our local policy, and then obviously 2 are local decisions about what it is that the board wants for the school district. And so really the process of looking through that policy reference manual was about taking each policy, looking at it relative to our own local policy, and then making some decisions around where we wanted to make some modifications. We did quite a bit of streamlining in that process of policy language, which again isn't really about changing the intent or impact of policies, but one about removing redundancy of language in a lot of cases, and really trying to simplify or clarify language as we went through. And so it's being brought for approval tonight. Again, through the help of the policy committee, we've identified all of the policies that had significant change in terms of language. Board members have had a chance to ask questions really over your last 3 meetings about those policies. It was approved for posting at your last meeting. It has been on public display. We've not received any comments specific to any of the proposed policies.
So I have a question. I know that when our state legislature comes back together, they tend to do massive changes. How often are we going to be needing to update this? As changes come in, or are we doing like twice a year? Or?
It's a great question. So 3 times a year, the Illinois Association of School Boards and their policy arm put out a set of policy revisions. So they do that in light of changes to the school code. Generally, as each of those 3, I don't want to say quarterly updates because they're not quite quarterly, but as they come out, those are usually the points in time that we'll look at any of the recommended changes. So definitely 3 points in the year, and then obviously as the board has worked on individual specific issues, you've also chosen to address an individual policy. So really that policy manual can change at any time when there's a need to adjust or update a policy, but kind of in a formal sense 3 times a year we do get updates to it.
That was a huge undertaking. Thank you, Jenna, and to Jim and everybody else, because that was, I sat on, Jim Broman, I sat on that when it first came about. We started looking at policy, and it's, we all know from reading that.
Yeah.
So.
Who's the current policy committee?
Minna and Rob.
Thank you for doing all that, seriously.
We haven't done, that committee hasn't started.
Well, Jen and Mathis, I know that. And, you know, really, Chris has been a major contributor to some of these topics, I believe, as well. No? Yeah.
Teaching and learning does. I mean, there's different, all groups do it, so all our
Okay.
groups do.
Well, let's say it this way, when it's time to vote here, I'm not going to make the motion or second it. I think the committee that is coming on this work should.
And my comment too in this is that was a great education into understanding exactly where our job ends and where the administration starts, and that was a lot of the cleanup too. And there were a lot of questions that came across the board. It's a lot of the same questions I had in committee too, and some of it was just realizing that not everything needs to be in our policy manual, because some of it is rightfully more implementation, and it's more under the jurisdiction of our administration. So I think we did a good job of cleaning it up by drawing the line where we needed to.
Okay, well, thank you. As Dr. Schiller mentioned, over the past several months, there's been, and even before the last meeting, there were a few questions by email that came from individual board members, clarification. I know Susan had a few issues that you wanted to ask, clarify tonight, or at least kind of make public some of the things you had identified. So now I'll turn it over to you.
No, I wanted just to say these in an open meeting, like, so there's a lot of discussion behind the scenes, and I felt like these were topics that a lot of us had questions on, and I just felt like needed to be, you know, I would just like to have them answered in an open forum too. So the first one was regarding 5.100, regarding teacher trainings, that there's 13 teacher trainings that are listed here, and I just wanted to, you know, have, like, why are these the 13 trainings, where do they come from, and is there an opportunity to, if we felt necessary, to add in trainings that we feel are specific to our district, that things that are affecting our district. So they just were, you know, very specific types of training, and I was just curious where
Yeah. So what is in that policy are the trainings that are required via school code. You can always exceed, you can always go beyond. So certainly at the local level, if there are other topics that we want to put in place required training, you can do more than 13. Right? We can have 100 required trainings if we want to have 100 required, but we just cannot not address the 13 required topics that are in the school code. Oh. And they're actually in your board packet. The regional office, the DuPage Regional Office of Education, just put out a new list of the required trainings. And again, what you'll notice on the top is that there are two more that have the letters NEW next to them. And so that list of 13 is ever expanding as it is, as new laws get passed. There was a new Seizure Smart School Act that brought about a new set of trainings that will be required by 2020. And then there's a new training around student discipline that will be required this year.
So when we require these trainings, how do we go about providing the trainings to our staff?
We do a lot of our required training through an electronic module, Global Compliance Network, that has put together required training. So it's a combination of face-to-face and the use of teaching.
Thank you. The next one was 6.10 regarding educational philosophy and objectives. And in the original, or I guess I could say our current policy, there is a bullet that I felt that we should still include in the adoption copy. That, and I'm not saying we discuss that tonight, but maybe when the next round of changes come through. And that one was that the public education is vital to the understanding, appreciation, and sustenance of our democratic form of government and in the nurturing of responsible citizenship. I just feel like as a government agency, a public school, that we receive government funding. You know, the 7 of us are sitting here because of the democratic process, and just being an adult and paying attention more to, you know, elections over the years. That's something that has really stuck with me, is that in the 2016 presidential election, if did not vote was a candidate, that would have won 471 electoral votes, including Illinois, that did not vote, if that was a candidate, would have won. And so I think there's only 8 states out of the 50 that had an actual candidate win. The rest of them did not vote, would have won. And so I just feel as a public school system, that still needs to be part of our educational philosophy, that we teach our kids that being a good citizen and understanding government and elections and voting matters, and that they should participate. And so I would, like I said, maybe in the next round, when that next time comes around in one of those 3 years, that if we could maybe discuss, adding that back into our philosophy. And I know, that you had said that civics is required at our high school, and that it's not like we're ignoring that, but it's just something that I just felt that, I would like to see still in our, in our policy manual.
Okay.
And then the next two, and I just have 2 more, are kind of related, that 6.280 on grading and promotion in the adoption copy, in our current copy there was language that talked about children with 504s and IDPs and how the grading is done, and that is removed from the adoption copy. And so I was just wondering if you explain, why that was removed and where that now.
Yeah, there's even another policy, 6.120, that's on the education of children with disabilities, that actually has more specific guidance and addresses that topic. So again, that was just a function of language not needing to sit in 2 places that addresses the same thing.
Okay, yeah, and I just wanted to say that we're not limiting that, it's not forgotten, it's just somewhere else. And then the same with 7.230, which had to do with disability misconduct. In our current policy, there's a lot of procedures about restraint and behavioral and what we do with children in behavioral situations, and all of that copy was removed, and it points to special education rules and that kind of thing in it. So I just wanted to address that too, that it's not that it was just we just got rid of it, it just resides somewhere else. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Chris, do you want to address that?
Yeah, just even further clarification on our old 7.230 actually read, as you said, very procedurally based, right? In the shift to condensing to 7.230 now is much more condensed. However, what it allows us to do is the old policy that we had really is an administrative regulation or an administrative procedure. We can shift that work to the administrative procedure, and because the regulations continually change, especially around restriction, all those different pieces, it allows us to have a subcommittee that can work annually to continually reevaluate that piece and adjust the administrative regulation, but still be covered from the compliance standpoint within the policy. And we actually do have a team both of special educators and regular educators and specialists that are evaluating that piece, working through some recommendations on the protocol, and then they'll be bringing it through CAC, the administrative rate change.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions about the revised press policy manual? Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the revised press Wheaton, Warrenville Community Unit School District 200 adoption copy board policy manual?
So moved.
Moved by Jenna.
I'll second.
Seconded by Rob. Mrs. Hutchinson?
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowden?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes. Okay, so that action item is passed. We now move to the oral reports. We have 3 separate oral reports. The first one is our student learning update.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let Melissa work her way up to the podium, and she's gonna give you the first update on one of the items actually in our strategic plan.
Okay, good evening. It's nice to have an opportunity to talk to you. I'm giving you an update relative to part of our Vision 2022 strategic plan, and specifically the goal area that talks about providing experiences and instruction to develop students' appreciation of cultures and diversity. So we used our EC12 administrative meeting on August 5th to launch this work with our team, and we're calling that work Proactive Practices because it really talks about the strategies that we use with our students to create that welcoming environment for them. We're really taking a whole child approach with this work, where it's a collaborative effort between Dr. Slagi and myself, where we're looking at not just the academic instruction, but also that social emotional instruction. With that too, we also had our administrative team do a crosswalk between our SEL framework and our FIT framework to look and see where these practices already exist. We also talked about some instructional practices that we have in place already, specifically Learning for All culture. That's part of our PLC process. One more thing to mention. We talked about culturally relevant teaching practices, specifically in the area of literacy, in that this idea of windows and mirrors, where our literacy materials and any curricular materials should really serve not just as a window where, or really, I want to say first, a mirror, where students can see a reflection of themselves. They should also serve as a window where they can take a look at other people's worlds and learn more about them. And so we're going to continue to work with our administrative team this year and our teachers about these culturally relevant teaching practices.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that? All right, next oral report is a social SEL update.
Dr. Slagi is going to give you this next one and probably launch right into the third oral report this evening. Brad?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Schuler. All right, so one, thank you for the opportunity, as always, to speak a little bit about social emotional learning. What I speak about tonight on our feature is really a continuation of what Mrs. Murphy spoke about. I'm going to highlight really a large focus that's bringing our framework to life this year around the SEL piece, and that's school connectedness and relationships. So you've heard me talk a lot about this as we built our framework out last year, and now we're seeing some of that work come to fruition. So want to highlight 4 learning opportunities, 4 full-day trainings that we'll be hosting the first and second week of September, all focused around school connectedness and meaningful teacher-student relationships for our kids, right? And so the true purpose of these trainings is for our schools to be more deliberate in building systems that ensure school connectedness for every student. Now, we've already talked, we're really, really good at this already, but we always want to get better, we always want to grow. So this will happen in September. Our elementary schools, each will be bringing 5 leaders to the table in addition to their administrators. Our middle schools will be bringing 8 team members in addition to their administrators, and our high schools will be bringing 10 members to this in addition to their administrators. And so again, we'll have 2 elementary trainings that are full day, 1 for all of our middle schools that's a full day, and 1 for our high schools that's a full day. The presenters of this are not just myself. Last spring, we had the opportunity to take 9 of our district staff members, a combination of teachers, specialists, counselors, administrators from each level, and attend a 3-day training through a grant that we got through the DuPage ROE called the STOP Grant. And it was a trauma-informed training where we were able to become certified in the trauma-informed practices. And the great thing about trauma-informed practices, when you learn about this, the number 1 strategy to combating our students that have had a lot of trauma outside of the home is to connect them to school, to make them feel safe and get them connected. So this leadership team, along with myself, will be presenting this learning opportunity for our staff members. And the content of this will be 4 parts. Part 1, really giving the literature and the background and the meaning behind why meaningful teacher relationships and school connectedness are so essential. 2, really digging a little bit deeper into trauma-informed practices and adverse childhood experiences. And then 3, providing the how. Instructional resources that allow our schools to build more deliberate systems. Our SEL team last year built a warehouse of resources, and we want to not only implement those, but we want to give our schools an opportunity to take those tools and utilize them to the best fit of their building, their staff, and the needs of their kids. So the afternoon will actually be spent in a team action planning mode, where they'll have some time to plan together with their teams. Kind of the fifth out piece of this, though, is we've asked our principals to be really diligent in the people that they bring to the table, because what they're doing is they're building a leadership structure that will leave here and go and do really good work within their building. So obviously there's connections to the SEL framework all over this work, but I would say the 2 pieces where it really integrates, obviously in our relationships section. The other area where it integrates is into the emotional wellness piece. So the emotional wellness piece, when we think about all students, it starts with an understanding that all students need a connection. When they have when they're connected to school, we improve learning, we decrease all of our emotional stressors. So when we think about resources, it's not always in an actual curriculum that's coming or a physical resource, but sometimes it's time and pulling our educators to us for a learning opportunity. And that's where we're putting a lot of bulk of our resources. You can see 24 educators at the high school, 37 at the middle school, and 86 at the elementary level. Not to mention some of our district administrative staff as well will all be trained the first couple weeks of September. So we're excited about that. Take any questions if there are any.
I have one. The trauma, the term trauma means, is a, identifying word. And I'm curious, is there more focus at an elementary level? I mean, based on the numbers, there's a lot more people being trained at that level. When does that get introduced more, I guess? Or where do we have the bigger concern, I guess a better way to say it? At the high school level, the elementary level?
Yeah, great question. I think all levels, So really the focus when the term trauma in this context is looking at adverse experiences that kids have outside of school. That could be anything from having a parent that may be imprisoned to living with a parent that's an alcoholic or living in a home where there's abuse. And the translation to that is that there is an effect on brain development, which affects behavior. And so that can happen really at any level. So I would say the importance of it is at every level that we're serving.
So when part of this training is obviously to identify that condition.
Partially, but also the other kind of overlapping philosophy of that is that 47% of our students across the country have had at least one adverse childhood experience. So it is best practice to work to connect with all students and to provide a safe learning environment, whether they've had an adverse experience or not. However, when we think about MTSS, right, so that's another piece of intervention piece for our students that have had an extreme number of adverse childhood experiences, that's where you're looking at not only our broad school systems, but how do we now identify and intervene even more. So that might be a connection there to MTSS is where we would be looking a little deeper, right? The focus of this really is we want all school systems that focus on connecting every kid.
Great, thank you, Chris. It's nice to see this continue in, I guess it's more than a year or two, but it feels like it's really hot and heavy again this year, so I look forward to seeing how this develops.
Thank you. All right.
And the other one is the Portrait Graduate Timeline and Process.
Yeah, so at the August, or actually this is the August, at the July meeting, we introduced the concept through a presentation on some of our portrait of graduate work and some of the work that we did with our entire EC 12th grade leadership team in June. And what I told you in July is that we would come back in August and really tidy up the timeline, talk about the input process, and then get any input from you as we kind of move forward here. So I'm going to just walk you through here just some refreshers and some reminders around Portrait of a Graduate. If we think about our work in schools, right? we really have purposefully designed systems really aimed at producing the best possible graduates. So we have obviously key frameworks like our learning environment, social emotional, our administrators and our teachers work really hard to promote a very positive school culture. We have those intervention services in places for students that are in need of those services. We have high rigor and high expectation for learning. We have a high focus on co-curricular involvement. All these pieces are aimed at producing the best graduate. And every level really matters, from EC all the way through 12th grade. Actually, in our presentation, we show a picture of one of our students starting at Jefferson, and we show the day that he's graduating, and we tell the story about how he's going to Vanderbilt. But his journey started when he was at Jefferson. Every level matters, right? So while all of our work is designed around developing a graduate, again, we come to why develop a portrait of graduate? Why take on this process? And I know you saw this in July, but I think it's important for us just to recap, right? This is an opportunity to express the school community's aspirations for all students, but it is also there's a humanizing element to this because we're really looking at it through the lens of a student. What do we aspire for our student? It puts a student at the center of our work while prioritizing the essential competencies. And ultimately, it communicates what the community can expect of a product of District 200. Let's talk a little bit about the process, and I'll give you a caveat here. In September, the process that we're utilizing with all our different groups, we're going to do here with you all and ask for your input on what we would expect from our graduates. So it really starts with an essential question, which is what are the qualities and skills our students should have when they graduate? But we don't lead with that question. And the reason why is we really want to have some context. So Dr. Kyle and I actually take participants that are going to be going through this process and stakeholders that are going through this process, and we create some context. We talk about the balance of academic skills and knowledge, and balancing that with future workforce trends, future-ready skills, and experience. And we actually ask participants to reflect upon the skills that are needed for the future and in the present to create some context and understanding before answering the essential question, which is what are the qualities and skills our students should have when they graduate. So who are we asking this question to? In your packets, you'll see a timeline. It says Portrait of a Graduate. And I caution to say that this is always open for change. We've continued to let this list of stakeholders evolve that we want to gather input from. But you'll see staff on there. We're actually going to be using our Sharper Focus time. It's an opportunity where our senior leadership team goes to every one of our schools. We're actually going to be using that time to gather input from every one of our staff members on the question of what do we want from our graduates when they leave us. Our students, our high school principals are setting up some sessions with current and former students to gather that input. And then obviously there's lists of many parent and community groups that we'll be utilizing as well. We've also worked with our principals on this, so our principals know that this isn't the presentation and the process that we've created is open to them to use with any of their key stakeholder groups as well. So in here you'll see a timeline, and one of the pieces as you look at the timeline, we also see that really the input time frame being now all the way through February, and that's really when we feel like we'll have all of our data compiled to start developing the actual portrait. And then we plan to bring that portrait through a few different people for feedback, through the Board of Education for feedback, with finalizing the portrait May of 2020. And then presenting that to you all in July, and then moving forward with some utilization of that in the following year. So we said why do a portrait of a graduate, but let's also think about this through the lens of what can the portrait of the graduate do for District 200, right? When we think about it from a board perspective, truth be told, if we're gathering input from thousands of community and school stakeholders, there should be some value in it, in prioritizing these essential skills and competencies. It can be used as a criteria tool for future and current decisions that are being made really at all levels. At the board level, we just talked about policy and decisions. At the school level, certainly being used for consideration as our major frameworks, both the Fit Learning Environment, our SEL framework. These frameworks evolve as our students and as our world evolves, right? And if we're taking it through the lens of what we desire for our graduates and always bringing it back to our student, it becomes a sounding piece and something that we can filter our frameworks through. It also can serve as a communication tool to staff and school community about what we expect and what the most important products are so that we can ultimately have the highest level graduates leaving us that reflect the desires of our community. The input process, I've talked about that, and again, we'll be doing this with the Board of Education at our September 25th session, but it's really a collaborative presentation. It starts with communicating purpose as to why the portrait of a graduate is important. We provide lots of context, both Dr. Kyle and myself, Mrs. Murphy, Dr. Schuler, depending on the group we're going with, Ms. Lackano, our principals at times, provide a lot of context to get people thinking in this area. And then we ask for participant interaction amongst them. And then at the end, we finish with an online interaction where we ask that key question: what are the skills and competencies that we want from our students when they leave us from District 200? So with that, again, it's almost another little sneak preview before we start the work. We've done one input session with our administrators. We kick off our first input session with our staff on Monday at Weesbrook, and that work will continue through February with many of our major groups, and I'll stop there and take any questions.
I have one question. Parents, primarily through the PTA?
We've got the parent groups, yes. So we're going to do a parent PTA council session here, and then we've also talked with our principals about utilizing this, and many are planning to do it with their PTA. Obviously, the CAC also will serve as a sounding board there as well. But some of our principals have also said there are other parent groups that they want to reach out to. When Dr. Kyle and I talked about this at our August in-service meeting, we received some more feedback about various outreach groups that we might want to bring this to as well. So while we've identified the PTA here, I would sense that may evolve just because some buildings will have a sense of, hey, we might want to get input from this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool that you got stuff like Lions Club and Rotary and all that. But just thinking about like how do we reach more people than, like CAC is almost an extension of PTA. I mean, it's like almost the same people that are really active. And so, which is great. I mean, and that's probably the people you want the most from, but still other people that maybe are on the fringe that aren't active in PTA that we want to get input from some people like that.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. And so I think every opportunity that we have to do that and that our principals have to do that, we want to take advantage of.
I think to your point, Chad, because I agree, I had the same thought that, but I think, like you said before, with our personal Facebook pages and stuff, that we can use, copy from the district to really try to get that out to people who aren't as involved. And I think it's just going to take a lot of putting it out there to let people know that this is going. And I think this is really exciting, and I think this is going to be a really, great process. But I had the same thought that, we want to reach as many people as we can, and I think that we need to, all need to utilize our outreach to do it.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. In certain respects, when I read this, I think of, are we cloning students? I guess there's such a variety of skill levels, that how do we deal with that in this? I mean, not everybody's going to come out with the same skill levels. Do we start with a minimum, or do we look at an achievement level? And, I'm just, again, looking at the cover of this document, there's, 3 diverse students there and so on, that, the goals of those 3 students are going to be different. And I don't know, how do we blend that into this?
Yeah, I think the first piece is obviously to listen to the input of all the stakeholders, right? And the online tool that we're going to use allows us to really not only get that input, but to compile that input that's in a really database manner. So one, we're going to get themes from all of our input groups. I think the second piece is that we don't want to put a limit on what those major themes that are coming to us are. Remember, the context that we're creating when we give this information focuses on both of those areas: high academic standards and high academic achievement and growth. But it also focuses on what are the work trends? What is the future of the economy that our kids are going into, and how do they serve it? And so we ask people to really think about that and even give them some of the research behind that. So ultimately, I can't predict what we'll see, but if I was to think about that, I think you're going to see a blend of academic skills, future-ready skills, social-emotional skills. I think you're going to see a blend of those pieces. But I think until we let the process play out, we can't predict what we're going to see there or how we develop the process. The key piece is that we have a process in place to gather the input and then a development process from there.
I think my comment that I was going to make ties to what Jim was saying too, where I like that you have the recent graduate input session, and I would want to know that for sure that we're reaching out to the full gamut of our graduates wherever they've gone after they've left us, whether it's college, whether it's technical careers, whether it's the armed forces, the workforce, what have you, to understand from those students, what did we do for you that was helpful? What could we have done for you? What kind of preparation do you wish you had had that you didn't realize you needed until you got out there and you didn't have it, that sort of thing. So I think if we try and reach out to everybody, from the special needs kids coming out of our transition program through the kids who went off to four-year colleges, I think that'd be really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Well, this is going to be a year-long process, so just like SEL, I look forward to, and we look forward to seeing how it evolves over the year, and look forward to any kind of interim report backs to us. Would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for the oral reports. We do have one discussion item tonight. That's the Vision 2022 update and board priorities for the 2019-2020 school year. Sure.
And draw the board's attention to a document that's in the packet that on the front cover says Vision 2022 2019-20 priorities. So in a little bit of context, the board over the last couple of years, you have maintained a strategic plan which is outlined kind of your long-term, short-term goal. From the items that are in the strategic plan, you've annually identified items that have been spelled out or called out in a more detailed goal document. And so we shared at the last meeting with the board the document that was presented a year ago with the new strategic plan, Vision 2022 plan, that took each of the items in the plan and kind of mapped it out over a 4-year sequence. And so we gave that to the board as a reminder. What we brought to you this evening is an updated version of that document laid out in a little different fashion. So rather than just go through like item by item in the Vision 2022 plan, we've really organized it by department, by key department work, to give you a sense of the work that's in front of us, the work that we perceive to be in front of us by department. And so if you flip over to the very first one that says Education Services Department, what you'll see in each of these pages is one, the goal out of the strategic plan, so the commitment out of the strategic plan that speaks specifically to that department. You'll see kind of a very short list of the priority areas for this year, what that means in terms of specific goals that we are addressing. But then we've also kind of moved each of those items into one of 3 categories. The first category being full implementation. So that area has been addressed. We're now fully implementing whatever that item is. Partial implementation means we're a little bit further ahead, so we may be kind of at the tail end of the, I guess what you'd call the research and development phase, and are now looking to implement that item, but in a kind of a feedback loop that's going to continue to refine it. And then the last one, which is really truly the research and development phase. So you heard a little bit this evening about proactive practices. We've got a committee that's coming together around writing and message production, but that is truly research and development phase. So that's not a curriculum that's being put in place for this year. That's a curriculum that's in that research and development phase. And we've done that for each of your key departments. So you have the work out of the Ed Services Department. On the next chart, you have the work out of Chris's department, which again, I think as the board goes through here, I hope that you're hearing information that you've really already seen in key updates, so this is not new surprise information, but we just really wanted to capture the work that's in front of us, again laid out the same way in full implementation, partial, and research and development. We've identified the key work in front of us in the tech department, which again has some of the key infrastructure updates, the new business HR system that is in the rollout phase through this year, and then a couple of items that sit in front of us and looking at some refresh opportunities around technology coming up that Rod and his team are trying to do some planning around. You see the update from the Community Engagement Department, and again, Erica gave her update and kind of that placemat plan for the board, so this really just reflects the information that Erica has presented for you. You see the update from the Business Services Department, which continues to focus on our commitment to be fiscally sound and responsible. You took another step in that as you move toward the approval of the budget tonight, but we obviously are going to continue to do some plan ahead around the capital improvement plan. We've done a lot of work to put in place kind of the ramp and get the target in place. We now want to look ahead to the next 3 years on the specific capital projects that we want to get accomplished with a 3-year look ahead around that. And obviously we're going to continue to complete the Early Learning Center, the Early Childhood Center on time and on budget. And then finally the update from Dr. Kyle's Department of Administrative Services, which again has a focus around safety and a focus around human resource, right, and those pieces. Part of why we kind of laid it out this way is that truly this year, as we tried to start thinking about specific priorities that we might call out, it was a little difficult to do, candidly. We've got a menu of work that's in front of us. It's important work connected to your strategic plan. But I guess what I'm proposing to the board tonight, not necessarily a decision point tonight, but rather than identify just 1 or 2 specific goals, right, that you draft out candidly in a way that often was really just kind of redundant to information already in the strategic plan. We're hoping that perhaps this format gives you a better sense of really the work that's in front of us this year, kind of where it is in its implementation phase, which then would kind of lead us to I guess the last piece, and that I know there are still some interest kind of in the study domain for certain topics that we want to explore. Brad has shared through the Facilities Committee some things that he would like to study through the Facility Committee. And so board members, certainly for the committees that you serve on, and obviously you can provide input for other committees, what we would ask for you to continue to do is identify kind of future study topics for those committees. So rather than kind of focus your attention on just developing like 1 or 2 board goals, right? Kind of give the blessing to this plan of work as the work that's in front of us for this year. And then again, kind of future focused topics, direct your feedback to specific committees on topics you'd like to have the board continue to study and look ahead at. So a little different approach to kind of what we've done around goals, but I think in many ways a more accurate reflection of the actual work that the board is helping to shepherd than just calling out like 1 or 2 specific goal areas.
Can I ask for clarification just on the levels of implementation? Full implementation is something that you have deemed that we have already got up and running?
So it should be fully in place this year.
It already It's going to be, or it is?
It should be fully in place in this school. So it's already been rolled out, it is
Okay.
being fully implemented.
And
this year.
then the research and development piece, is that a back burner thing that we're thinking about later, or is that something?
It's not a
that-
back burner, it just means that there is some committee or some group that is working on developing that topic. So it's not been like developed, so in the curriculum space, it's not been developed and rolled out to all staff as you're implementing it this year. It means there's a pilot team or a kind of a small research and development team that's actually working on developing the curriculum, developing that initiative.
And then the middle piece will be rolling out?
That means, yeah, it is rolling out in some form, but again, likely still in a place where we're, I guess we're in that formative stage where we're using some feedback to continue to refine and improve. So example of that in the teaching and learning space is elementary social studies. The board approved a new set of resources around elementary social studies. Those resources are going to be in place this year, so they've been purchased, they've been distributed, but there's an element around kind of the use of an inquiry design model that Melissa and her team are still working on kind of fine tuning. So they're there, they're being implemented, but there's an active fine tuning that's still taking place.
So the level of implementation, I can see that fitting through the different board committees. Where I get stuck is it's where do we fit the technology one? Because that doesn't directly relate to any board committees to kind of run things through.
Yeah, and really at this, I mean, typically around technology, so we can certainly blend it in, but technology was usually just brought to the full board. So you've had a kind of a standing February into March discussion item around your master technology plan, kind of where we are and where we sit. So obviously as those things apply too, so there's a piece in facilities and infrastructure that obviously has a connection to technology, and then there's a connection into the fit and into the instructional space. So it doesn't really have its own committee, and I think the board's got really a lot of standing committees as it is. But I would continue to monitor that through your master tech plan.
I've got an acronym question on the first one. There's 4 acronyms. I have 2 of them.
Okay.
2 of them I'm not sure. EL and ELA.
Yeah. English Language Arts is ELA.
Okay.
EL is English Learner. So that is your second language program.
Thanks.
And Kristen, one last thing, I'm sorry, I just want to say, the other piece in terms of the full implementation, partial, and research and development, using those categories is also helpful for us in terms of internal communication, because again, I think Red going through and making some notes and counting the amount of like what's in front of us, and it's a lot, right? But because those are in different phases, that allows us to keep track of who's impacted by that initiative or that change and at what level, so that we have some, we're aware of there not being kind of an overload of a particular group of teachers or department that are being impacted by 3 initiatives that are in the full implementation phase, right? So if it's in research and development, unless the teacher is volunteered to be a part of that research and development team, it's not likely impacting them this year. What's impacting them are full implementation or partial implementation items. So it helps us really more in terms of kind of internal communication, not, again, some of what's in research and development, probably going to be a part of board committee discussion as well as we're working through that, but that's really helped us to just kind of map out implementation internally.
So how does this relate then to the dashboard that we have out there with some things in full implementation, for instance, in partial, and some things in research development? Like how do we get those metrics then?
Yeah, well, so the dashboard has some items that have connection to the strategic plan, but it also just has some standing metrics that you are monitoring that may not be connected to all of the work that's in your so again, I think your monitoring effort as a board is really monitoring your strategic plan. What are the strategic initiatives that you've approved and are putting in place? and the kind of the standing metrics that you're going to monitor on an annual basis, regardless of whether they are directly reflected in the strategic plan or not. So the dashboard and the strategic plan are complementary items, but they aren't necessarily addressing exactly the same topics. Does that make sense, Chris?
So the way I think thinking it, that the research and development, the way I read that is that that's where we hope to be by 2022. Is that a fair statement? That's kind of where we're moving?
Yeah, that is the item that we are actively working on, that will have a full, yes, so I mean, this is all part of the Vision 2022 plan,
Right,
meaning our
right.
goal is to have it all complete,
Right,
by the end of that year. But again, if there are things that are in active research and development this year, very likely a number of those items are gonna be rolling out next year.
Right, yeah, okay. I think that was what I was that I was looking for, is that we have this 4-year plan, and that these are building blocks to where we're going, and I just want to see where are we going, like what are the blocks of how we get there, and I like this format better than what we had last year. I like the level of implementation, but I think that research and development addresses that piece fairly well about the building blocks of how we're getting where we want to go.
And again, I would absolutely anticipate through, so again, you look at the Ed Services Department and the 5 items that are in research and development, those are items absolutely that the Teaching and Learning Committee, I anticipate, is going to be monitoring and discussing through the year to hear kind of where are we in terms of those implementation plans and structures.
Can I also, I was assuming that I'm not taking from that that's an exhaustive list of everything that it's going to take to implement Vision 2022, just that those are the next identified ones, and a lot of them may move into other levels of implementation, and next year there could be a whole set of things in that box.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, and there's not actually, if you do the crosswalk with the items in Vision 2022, there's not much in Vision 2022 that's not reflected in these. So, I mean, all of the work in your strategic plan truly is in some phase of like active development. There truly isn't a whole lot that's left out of there, which again would make sense because we're a little over a year into kind of a 4-year plan, so all of the work is in some phase of development or implementation.
So I'm just trying to understand, so in the past, we have identified typically 4 goals that the board has wanted. Now it's more looking at a larger work plan versus 4 specific. Am I right in understanding that?
Yeah, and I guess what I would say, Chris, will phrase it slightly to say, actually do think in a more accurate way, this reflects what the board has identified, because this is all based on your strategic plan. So, even over the last couple of years, when you call out 1 or 2 goals every year, you're not working on every item that's in that strategic plan. This is probably a more accurate representation of the work that you've actually mapped out as a board through approving that 4-year strategic plan.
Any other questions on the format? I just have a few comments. There's 42 specific goals. I understand that they're in 3 different layers, but a couple things kind of stand out to me, and I don't know if those are kind of things that will be pushed on to committee discussion, but I've been kind of taking notes of things that I would be interested in covering, non-facility related, but under the educational services and middle school math, I'm kind of interested in maybe adding to that a STEM program. Having had 2 daughters go through, one just graduated, I kind of feel like that's maybe an area we can improve upon from what I see versus some other school districts that I work with. So when we think about middle school math, if we can middle school math / STEM, it's an area of interest of mine. I'm really interested in career pathways. I know that that's something we've talked about in terms of that high school program and enriching that experience for kids. Kind of on the technology department, it's really technology department and business services, and for community engagement, I think I've shared in prior meetings, I'm really interested in talking with our community or sharing information with our community about the financial success we've had. I think if you look at all the statistics and measurements and rankings and comparisons to other benchmark districts, we've got a really great story that's been built over a long period of time, and I'm really interested in exploring how we share and continue to share with our community that we're actually doing good stuff in terms of fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers and meeting our students' needs at the same time. So that's kind of another core issue that I'm interested in, and that goes with the developing the finance facts maybe. Several issues on the facility side, which I did share with Jeff earlier about some of the facility-related topics, and I need to share those at the board. Maybe should I share those, that list? So I'll get to that. Two quick things in terms of the monitor, the food service sales versus projections. I'm kind of curious how that's going to go this year. If we can get some report back on that during the course of the year. And then I guess finally, in terms of the facility needs, some of the, I guess I'll just call it two priorities that I think we need to do this year is we're in a construction market where construction costs are going up. I think it would behoove us as a board to, our facility committee and then to the board to make some decisions a bit earlier on authorizing work so that we can get out to the market and get out for bid a little bit earlier than we have in the past. That's something that I'd really like to accelerate into our discussions this year. And then I guess the third one maybe ties into something I just said. The second one ties into something I just said in terms of laying out that 3-year capital improvement program. And if we're able to do something at the middle schools with STEM programs, how that might tie into facility improvements within that 3 years might be interesting as a curriculum-driven facility improvement. So those are just some things that kind of stand out to me. I know we had the parking lot, which you really narrowed down from the things. We've actually taken a lot of stuff and accomplished a lot of things off the parking lot. We have 2 items essentially left that people have brought up previously. I guess do any board members have comments or things that we would like to either push down to the committee level or get on the table for future parking lot? Just I guess it's kind of memorialized for going forward.
I have one that I personally not neutral on it, but I just heard over the last year or so, I've heard it from several different people in different areas and everything, that there seems to be a lot of interest in foreign language at the elementary level. And I thought that would maybe be just a good discussion point at the CAC. And I know we've talked about a lot of things. Like I said, I'm just voicing that from a community perspective. That is just something that I've heard a lot about, and I thought that might be a good CAC topic.
I've heard about that.
I'd like to, I think to evaluate year-round school, I'd like to remove that. I don't think it's practical at this time. But I would like to replace it with full-day kindergarten programs.
Specifically, full-day kindergarten, what would you be interested in exploring in terms of full-day kindergarten?
I think, again, offering it basically without compensation. I think that's the distinction that we're looking at today, that most of the, or many of the districts around us do not have, don't have a tuition cost. And, I'd like to see if we can somehow work that out. I think there's again, we talk about early education being a significant item, and I hope there's not students missing out because we don't offer that full-day program.
I think I'd like to look at, I'm trying to think how to say it. Right now, I think we have a class that's called Adult Living. It's an elective. I've been reading a lot about how our students, or not our students, but students in general, are cramming their schedules with AP classes and all these things. They go off to colleges, but they don't know how to, when they get out into the real world, do basic skills of things. And so, I know it used to be things like home ec and that, but I think adult living, I know one of my daughters took it at Wheaton North, and it encompassed so many different things, but I felt like she's much more capable of doing basic things now that others, my other daughter, would not have any idea how to do. So I think kind of developing that whole person. So I'd like to explore that a little bit. And I would like to still keep high school start times on the parking lot.
So I just want to second that what Chris said. I'm reading a lot of articles too about these early 20-year-olds or teens, literally calling them adulting classes, that they're how to create a budget, how to go grocery shopping, how to make pasta, how to make a grilled cheese. You know, it's very basic stuff and they have no idea how to do it. And so I think I think parents have a good intention of doing it, but parents are working and doing lots of other things. So I think that is something, I agree. I think home ec was a huge loss, I'll be honest. So, thank you.
Okay, anybody have any other thoughts or suggestions?
Can you remind me how we manage the parking lot? What happens to the list after this?
Well, I guess from my perspective, we're going to have some more things on it. Sometimes the issues will get brought to the CAC for further study. We'll just keep seeing it, so bring it up at a future time.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is that the implication of it being a parking lot is that there's been an expressed interest. The next step beyond that would be a board member requesting a specific discussion on the topic that likely would happen first at the appropriate committee level that wants to begin to have a deeper discussion. And I guess to the suggestion that Susan had, unless it's a topic that you're saying I would just be interested in hearing some community feedback around the topic, then I think appropriate to ask Citizens Advisory Committee to wrestle with it and kind of weigh in on the topic. And again, when we bring something to that group, it's not around making a decision as much as it's around understanding the range of opinion and feedback on the topic itself. A good example of that was the high school start times that we did bring to that group, and there was very diverse opinion on whether it's a good idea, bad idea, kind of the whole piece. And so we didn't ask that group to make a decision as much as just kind of provide feedback on the range of thoughts around it. So I guess to that question, right now, if it's on the parking lot, it's just on the parking lot as an expressed interest. Step 2 is if a board member really wants to move a discussion forward, you've got to either bring it to the agenda of the committee and or at some point request it as a full board discussion topic. But again, our practice has been around study topic that it gets vetted through a committee first before that we can move into a more detailed board discussion.
I think that, what you just said there, the topic you both just mentioned, what I would call living skills program, I think I'm ready to bring that to the table. I think we need to address that. As we go to the training programs and we hear about the pressure of being a junior and how many AP classes, how many clubs people are in, I think, I'd like to maybe convey that some of that information that we're learning at board level, to students and the, just the general lifestyle things of cooking and, budgeting and so on. So, I recall that, the first time my children ever got involved with a budget was when I kind of forced them in some of the applications for college, to say, this is how you have to live and this is what you got. And that was something probably I felt back then should have been a topic of communication. And I think since we have dropped, there was a time that grade point and class rank and all that was significant, so people didn't sign up for those kind of programs in the past, and because it was detrimental to their class rank. But seeing we don't produce that kind of information anymore, I think those are really good living skill programs, and maybe not a whole semester even, but something. It's part of that graduate topic we were just talking about, and make it. A half year or a half semester in lieu of a study hall or tie into that or something, because I do believe those are critical skills that we're, in general education isn't providing right now. So I don't think it should be a parking lot. I think it should be a topic of discussion.
Yeah, again, you can. It just I would recommend. So I want to be really clear. So this is the other thing I want to be careful of. So I'm just saying word of caution. So we mapped out a set of initiatives over the next 4 years. I want to be careful that we're not now just kind of completely circumventing that by now all of a sudden saying, by the way, these 3 things are coming into the loop for discussion because we're going to consider them, as well. That's my suggestion on why I would move something through a committee first, so that A, we can appropriately frame out what are we studying, what are we even looking at, and let's begin to identify the impact on the system before something like that would come to here, because candidly, if it's not been a part of our strategic plan, doesn't mean we can't do it, but then we also have to have a discussion about what drops off. Like what did we at one time say was important, now isn't nearly as important, so we're going to drop that if we're going to study another topic, right? It's just about capacity of the organization.
I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of developing what we're calling the profile of the graduate.
Correct. So it may well come into play as a part of that discussion.
Maybe that's the way I approach it. And to me, it's not a parking lot issue. It's really something more practical now and should be part of that process.
So would that be a teaching and learning committee conversation? All right, anybody else? All right. Thank you for that discussion. We have 3 written reports that are available to board members as well as the public. That's the monthly financial reports. Number 2 was the Freedom of Information Act report and the construction update on the Early Learning Center. Are there any questions board members have about those reports? Okay. Any reports from board members? Any activities or topics?
I only have a comment. I think I'm starting to see some information coming in about the November School Board Association training. And I'd like to make sure, again, we coordinate who attends what a little bit so that we don't have overlap and we cover a lot of topics that are, I don't know what committee would be involved with that, but again, I don't want us to all go to the same process. And, so if we can somehow coordinate that, I would think that would be a good idea.
Okay. I have one real quick thing in your green folder is a piece of paper that I developed, which is kind of a summary for individual board members with one new thing that I've added. I previously gave out the committee assignments, got everybody's input on that, noting that Jim Matheson and I will kind of rotate or share the interaction with the Citizens Advisory Committee, just so we have a board representation there. New this month that I did send out by email to individual board members was the adopted school assignments for the year. And that's something we created 5 years ago, maybe, where individual school board members kind of spend a little bit more time in individual schools to learn about the different culture and challenges and opportunities and activities that are going on. Just to spend a little bit of time being a little bit more connected to that portion of our school community. And then the final thing is something that I've talked about previously with the interaction with the Student Excellence Foundation. And I've talked with Vicki Isabella and the president, Jennifer Merck, of the Student Excellence Foundation, and we've kind of agreed upon a new model for where they would come to one of our meetings on a rotating basis and in public comment share some activities and events and successes they're having, with the objective of trying to have them be a little bit more public and give them a little bit more visibility within our school community. And on the alternating meetings, we would have a board member attend their meeting and share what's going on with the Board of Education and spend a little bit of time with them. So then we would do that kind of on a rotating basis. I laid out kind of the schedule there. I will be attending the Student Excellence Foundation board meeting on Monday to kind of introduce this. This seems to be well received, and I think the SEF board is excited about trying to make their work a little bit more visible and still have some direct connection to the board, to our board. So I guess what I'm asking for is, there's 5 meetings here that have kind of been identified. I would love it if an individual board member, we don't have to decide tonight, but would volunteer to just kind of attend, share some information of board activities, listen to what's going on, and then we can kind of rotate that responsibility. Would give each of us a little bit of exposure. I know Jim has done previously, so.
What time are those?
Yeah, what day is that?
Monday nights.
Monday nights at 7.
What, 7?
7 here.
So.
And thank you for sending out the adopted school, the outline of the discussion points.
That was shared by Diane, right, in terms of kind of the objectives? Yeah. So that's it. Those are the three things: the committee assignment summary, the adopted schools, and then kind of the new model that we're going to create for interaction between our board and the SEF board. So, any other questions or comments on that, or other reports from board members? Okay, topics for future discussion is the approval of the 2019-2020 budget. We have two upcoming meetings. On September 25th is the committee of the whole. The September meeting, I think? What's the September? Oh, okay. The September 25th, 2019 committee of the whole is here at 7 o'clock, and then October 9th. During our regular meeting, if you recall, we're going to have a condensed version of that meeting, and then follow that up with a board self-evaluation of the IASB organization. Our next regular meeting is September 11th at Sandburg Elementary School. We do have some public comments on non-agenda items. We have 3 people signed up, so I will read kind of the board introduction to that. Public comments are valuable and important board members. We welcome the opportunity to listen to the concerns and issues that are important to our community. However, it is the board's policy not to directly discuss or take action on any items until the time has been taken to gather adequate information and objectively evaluate available options. Please understand that lack of action or response tonight does not imply any lack of interest in what is being said. In addition, to preserve confidentiality, the board and its president reserve the right to request that items relating to either personnel or students be provided to the board privately or in writing for consideration in a future closed session. The board must protect the stability and decorum of the meeting. Please be respectful for the duties of the board, our district leadership team, and the democratic process in your comments tonight. Please use the microphone, state your name, and address your comments to the board. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Member Crabtree will be timing the comments and raise her arm as we get close to 3 minutes. Please be factual and courteous. Do not include any statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. If you feel your matter needs to be discussed in more detail, please attend the board's next chance to chat, which is on October 22nd of this year, and present your comments in writing via email to the board. The first registered or signed up public comment is Lisa Pfister.
You guys are here to support me, or I feel like I'm already ganged up on. My name is Lisa Pfister. I was educated here K through 12. As a young first grader, I used to get stomach aches. Mom was not sure what was going on. I didn't want to go to school, so she would call and she would say, you know, something's going on in the room. Something's going on in the room. Nothing's going on in the room. Something's wrong with your daughter. She kept trying. I kept not wanting to go. She pushed and pushed, and she was told that I needed psychiatric care. I needed to see somebody. I don't know what happened being a first grader, but eventually the teacher in the room was removed. We had Mrs. Sub. The sub came in. She read us a lot of Amelia Bedelia. Then we had Ms. Mangano. She became our new teacher. I think my mom was telling me this the other day. I think that's probably part of why I don't like to not be believed. And something that happened last year at South, this would have been my 10th year working for y'all. 6 years at Hubble as a sub, a year at South as a sub, and last year I was a teacher aide, and I worked with a lot of special ed students. I was standing in the doorway of the homecoming assembly, and a dean was right there, and he kept looking out, and looking out, and looking out, and looking back, and there's nothing happening. And all of a sudden, he walks by me, and it's the door where it has the metal bar in the middle, but he walks on my side. He thrusts out his pelvis, and he rubs his genitals on me. You can believe me, you cannot believe me, I can't make you believe me. You should be uncomfortable, and I want your outrage. I want things to change. That's why I'm here. I feel the district failed me, and I feel that the district failed the other women that came forward with complaints. I was approached by the police department. Someone had called them saying that they had an anonymous call. Did I want to press charges? And I literally had one foot out the door to go to talk to the Dr. Kyle. That was meeting day to see because everything had been talked through. And I said, I want to wait and see where everything falls. And he said, well, if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, give us a call. So it didn't work out the way I thought it would. Dumbfounded, flabbergasted. So I approached them, nothing happened there. Okay, what are my options now? This man is still walking the building. I'm worried. Yes?
You've hit your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next signed up speakers, Jody Remick.
Yep. Close enough. Hi, my name is Jody Brennock. I'm a parent of future District 200 children. And as my son is going to be entering kindergarten in 2020, I started researching a little bit into our school district. And I noticed that we are lacking in any type of dual language program. As a parent, I believe we're doing our children and our town a disservice by not having a dual language program. I did take a look at the ISB website. I'm a former teacher as well. And so many of the neighboring towns offer a dual language program. I could list them, but you can just go on the ISB website and see. But almost all of our neighboring towns are offering it. West Chicago, Glen Ellen, LaGrange, Lombard, Carroll Stream, so many. As a former teacher and linguistics students, the earlier a child learns a language, the easier it is on them. And the more likely they will continue. At this age, they don't realize that they're learning something, so they won't resist it as much. Also, as a real estate agent currently, families do notice whether or not there is a dual language program. I have had a family choose a home in the Churchill-Glen Ellen district, despite the higher taxes, because they did offer, and they do offer, a dual language program. I do notice that Wheaton is improving their downtown. It seems to be to compete with neighboring towns as well. I think that we should also look to improve our schools. To those opposed to this, it is an option, at least in the neighboring towns. You don't have to send your child to the dual language classroom. You can choose the English only. So I don't believe it affects you. I do think it can also increase property values and make Wheaton a more desirable town. I do want to thank you for being invested in our children's future. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And then third is Diana Flood.
Hi, Diana Flood here. I'm friends with Jody, and quite ironically, I was interested in dual language programs because I have small children that will be attending District 200 Lincoln Elementary School. And it kind of started, I was wanting to learn Spanish myself to kind of further myself in my career, because I think that's going to take me further, and it's going to take most people in the future. That's kind of the trending direction. Unfortunately, as an adult, I looked for resources in Wheaton that could help me learn language, and there wasn't much within the community, which is fine, you know, I can look elsewhere. But then I started thinking about my children. If this is something important to me, this is definitely going to be important to my children. And it was disappointing because I learned that there were no dual language programs in any of our schools here. And another ironic thing is I have friends from Huntley, friends from West Chicago, speak about how they have these dual language programs, Lombard, she mentioned some of them. And it was really disappointing. Like, why are we sitting in the middle while everybody has this option? It's not like she said everybody needs to have it, but it's something that I would like my children to have, but I don't have that opportunity. And me and my husband are thinking of moving and all these other things. And not that that's a strong enough factor to make us move out of Wheaton, but it definitely is a little disheartening that we don't have that option. And not really, I'll be honest, I've never been to something like this before, and I wasn't even sure if I was in the right spot. And friends had encouraged me to come speak out to the board. So I was so happy when you mentioned something like that. But I am a snapshot of the future children that will be attending, and I can tell you that it's important to me, so there's others that it's important to. So I just think it's worth a look into. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the public comment. Now we close this meeting and move to closed session. I'm going to move to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing student disciplinary cases under 5 ILCS 120/2, subparagraph C, subparagraph 9. Action is expected following the closed session. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rob. I have a roll call vote here.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooten?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. We're going to adjourn to closed session at this point in time. Thank you.